Welcome to the voice of the Kabuki House, or the VKH Theater. Kabuki is a traditional Japanese performance art known for its drama, white makeup, and expressive movement. Tonight, you are in for a real treat. Prepare to be transported as we unveil the epic play of Vogt-Koyanagi-Harada, or VKH, versus Sympathetic Ophthalmia, exploring their origins, their conflicts, and their key differences. Looks like the audience is simmering down, a sign that the play is about to begin. VKH, an autoimmune disease targeting melanin-pigmented tissues due to T-cell dysfunction, unfolds in distinct stages. To anchor this, let the T-shaped torii gate on the stage remind you of that very T-cell dysfunction driving the disease. The first act is the prodromal phase. Before the curtain rises, this quiet period before the show represents that stage. Look closely. A few audience members are munching on popcorn, a classic theater snack. In ice sketch, popcorn is a recurring symbol for inflammation, and even at the prodromal phase, subtle signs of ocular inflammation may appear. Now notice the audience member coughing. He probably should have stayed home. Let his discomfort represent the systemic symptoms of the prodrome, feeling unwell, fever, headache, and in more severe cases, even aseptic meningitis. The play is officially starting. Let this resonant gong symbolize the auditory involvement in VKH. Hearing loss is another common neurologic feature of this disease. Let the start of the play represent the acute phase or uveitic phase of VKH. Two kabuki dancers step onto the stage. Let their paired entrance symbolize the bilateral ocular involvement that usually occurs in this disease. These dancers are the main stars of the voice of the Kabuki House production. As they begin to dance, notice the two paper lanterns illuminating the stage. In the acute phase, inflammation intensifies and can involve the optic nerve, so let these lanterns remind you of optic nerve edema. Below the stage, the chorus adds their beautiful harmonies to accompany the dancers. Let this chorus represent the choroid. Their placement beneath the stage mirrors the choroid's anatomic position beneath the retina. In VKH, this choroidal involvement is a defining feature, one that helps distinguish it clearly from sympathetic ophthalmia. And look behind the dancers. Waves ripple across the backdrop. These waves represent serous retinal detachments. When inflammation becomes severe, fluid can accumulate under the retina, shifting with position, just like the waves in this dramatic scene. What a dramatic end to the acute or uveitic phase, which marks our transition into the convalescent or chronic phase of VKH, which develops after several weeks to a few months. Notice how the paper lanterns are now dim. Optic nerve edema is now resolving as the inflammation quiets. Additionally, notice how the chorus has softened. The waves in the backdrop have calmed too, symbolizing the resolution of serous retinal detachments. Our kabuki dancers return to stage, now wearing white masks. These pale masks represent the skin depigmentation seen in the chronic phase. Because VKH targets melanin via T-cell dysfunction, it often affects more highly pigmented ethnic groups, such as Asians, Hispanics, and Native Americans. Integumentary findings at this stage can include vitiligo, poliosis, or white eyelashes, and alopecia. And look behind them. The sunset is descending in the background. Let this setting sun in the convalescent stage remind you of the classic sunset glow fundus, created by choroidal depigmentation as the disease becomes chronic. What's this? A samurai steps onto the stage. Let this warrior represent sympathetic ophthalmia, a disease very similar to VKH but with key distinctions. Recall that VKH is a spontaneous autoimmune reaction against melanocytes. Sympathetic ophthalmia is also T-cell mediated and targets uveal melanocytes, but it is triggered by trauma or intraocular surgery. Let the eye patch over the samurai's face symbolize the initial ocular injury, the critical distinguishing feature of sympathetic ophthalmia. Notice how he puts a finger to his lips. The chorus falls completely silent. Unlike VKH, sympathetic ophthalmia does not typically involve the choroid. Let the silent chorus remind you of that. Such a dramatic presence demands quiet. See the plants growing between the stage and the chorus? These are Fuki plants, common throughout Japan. Let them represent Dahlen-Fuchs nodules, small granulomatous collections of inflammatory cells located between the retinal pigment epithelium and Bruch's membrane. They occur in both VKH and sympathetic ophthalmia, as well as in other granulomatous uveitic conditions. Their placement between the chorus and retinal stage mirrors their sub-RPE location, a commonly tested detail. As the play ends, take a look at the starry night in the background. On fluorescein angiography, the choroid in acute VKH lights up like a starry sky, with tiny pinpoint leaks, the classic starry night appearance. Notice the worker next to the sign that reads "Doors reopen at 4." Let this remind you that inflammation can recur, representing the chronic recurrent phase. Notice how the D, R, and 4 are a different color. Let this be a symbol for HLA-DR4, which is an allele associated with both VKH and sympathetic ophthalmia. For treatment, first-line therapy is immunosuppression with corticosteroids, as symbolized by the worker shutting off and modulating the stage electricity. In sympathetic ophthalmia, definitive enucleation of the injured eye can be considered in severe or unresponsive cases, but it is not always required. Modern management focuses on systemic immunosuppression to preserve vision in both eyes. And that concludes our Kabuki production. Remember, VKH is a staged, T-cell-driven autoimmune attack on melanin, starting with a prodrome erupting into bilateral uveitis with optic nerve edema, choroidal inflammation, and serous detachments, then settling into a chronic phase marked by depigmentation and the classic sunset glow fundus. Sympathetic ophthalmia enters as the samurai, also melanocyte targeting, but triggered by trauma or surgery, with a silent chorus to remind you that choroidal involvement is less prominent. Both can show Dahlen-Fuchs nodules. And finally, both diseases require aggressive immunosuppression, with sympathetic ophthalmia sometimes calling for enucleation of the injured eye. Well, looks like curtains are closing. See you at the next show.